welcome back to another episode of Butler's Babble, where we try to empower, motivate, and inspire people to be living the best lives that they can possible. I just want to give a little cliff notes now, as this will be our very first episode that is not actually being live streamed live as we shoot it. We have now changed formats. For those that don't know, we've changed now to pre-recording these interviews for a couple reasons. One main reason is for bandwidth and internet. It makes a better quality video and audio for you guys to experience. We don't have to worry about if internet cuts out in the middle of an episode and we have to scrap the episode while we're doing live. So that's a great thing. We can record it, have it ready to go, and upload it for you guys to see at your own leisure. The other reason for it is it will allow us now to bring you more episodes of Butler Babble, because now we can record more episodes per week with other people bringing their traumas and stories to you, and we'll be able to bring you more at a time instead of just doing one a week or one every couple of weeks. So we're excited about this. It's a new format. We hope you enjoy it, and you'll still be able to comment and ask questions through the chat panels, but this way we can bring you more and more interesting stories from interesting people around the globe. So without any more babbling from myself, let's let you know about our guest for today. Our guest today moved to Canada back in 1969, and she's the author of Dealing with Early Onset Alzheimer's, Love, Laughter, and Tears. An amazing book. I just got this a couple weeks ago. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I've skimmed through it, and a lot of information in here. Hope you go out and check it out. We'll talk about the book a little bit later on, but enough of my talking. Why don't we bring her on here? Today's guest, we have author Sonia Discher. Sonia, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you.
So for those who don't know you or haven't read your book yet, why don't you give us a little history on who Sonia is, where you grew up, the moving to Canada, and just a little bit more background about Sonia herself.
Okay. Algoma Steele from Sault Ste. Marie came to England looking for tradesmen, and my father was a welder and plater, and he got the job, and they brought us over in 69. I was 10, and we moved to Sault Ste. Marie. So I went into grade 5 then. I met Steve, my husband, in grade 7. Really wasn't attracted to him then because I was only young, and he was up to my shoulder. He was short, But when we went into high school, he shot right up, and we started dating as soon as I turned 16. And we got married just before we turned 21.
Okay.
So I played baseball and volleyball and that at school.
So as a kid, you were more of an athletic then, or were you more of the academic, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I didn't really consider myself athletic, but I enjoyed doing the sports. So, and he played hockey and football in high school. And so, yeah, we were pretty active. We had a lot of friends. And
so you're more like me, like an extrovert. You were just a popular kid. You're just, anybody came around, you play with them. You weren't like an introvert staying at home all the time.
No, I wasn't an introvert. I wasn't, how you'd say, the popular kids.
I know the feeling.
I had lots of friends, and so did Steve. He was a social butterfly, and I didn't consider myself a social butterfly, but I think when my parents used to go and get the teacher interview, I was always commented that I talked a lot. So
yeah, I wonder where I've heard that before.
Yeah, I know. My kids did too. So
yeah, no, I was the same way growing up. I was the type that I wasn't the popular, but I wasn't in with the non-popular kids. I sort of was friends with everybody.
Yeah,
I talked to everybody, and the same thing. My parents would be called, not called, but you go to the parent-teacher interviews all the time, yes. And no, John's doing very well. He can excel a bit more in this if he tried, or this and that, but one thing we got to get is he likes to chatter a lot, and he's talking to kids beside him, and he likes to talk. Maybe right. That's why I'm good at what I do here. So
that's right, yeah.
So when you moved to Canada, whereabouts in Canada did you say you moved into?
Sault Ste. Marie.
Sault Ste. Marie. Okay, so how long were you in Sault Ste. Marie?
Till Steve joined the military in 1980, and then yeah.
So when you moved here in 1969, were you in school by that time or no?
Yes, I was in grade 5.
You were in grade 5. Okay. So that must have been a bit of a culture shock then, moving from England to here in grade 5, because it's two totally different places.
Right. I made friends easy because everybody wanted me to talk and hear my accent at the time. I was trying to get their accent because Canadians had an accent to me, so I was trying to talk like them. So I met a lot of people that way. The one thing I did note was we had done math short division all the time.
Mhm.
And I had a test one time and there was 10 questions on it and I got 0. And I
Ah,
was good in math and I took it home and showed my dad and he said, these are all right. He said, just ask why you got a 0. And I hadn't seen them do long division.
yeah.
And that's why I didn't do it their way.
Okay.
So I
You
had
just
to
came up
learn
with the
that.
answer.
Yeah, I just did it the short division like I always
Yeah.
did. And so I
I
had
know
to learn
that
that.
that was the hard part for me growing up with division all the time, doing the long division and you minus this and that. Yeah, that was my hard thing. But you obviously were pretty intelligent. You were able to just answer them easily, I guess.
Yeah, and so I just had to learn to put all the work down on the side
Yeah.
like they were doing, and I didn't have a problem after that. But they hadn't told me that it was
Yeah.
different. Just
Had
gave
you
me a
ever done long
test.
division before, or you just didn't know how to
No,
do it? Okay.
no, I'd never done it. But and I think my schooling over there was a little bit of ahead
Mhm.
of what it was in grade 5. I'd already done all that stuff before, so I found the first year here really easy, and then
Okay.
so it was good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because you say you were trying to get the Canadian accent because they all want you to speak. Because now I would have never known you came from England because you don't really have that English accent
Only
anymore.
if I get mad, it comes
Uh,
out. Or if I'm around my family, it
yeah.
just comes back automatically.
Yeah.
In fact, when my kids were little, if I was telling them off, they'd stand and grin at me, and then I'd get mad because they're grinning at me telling them off. But it was because my accent came out, and they were grinning at that. I found that out after the fact, though.
So
But if I answer the phone and it's my family in England, it just comes right back. You just talk like they do.
like exactly. No, I can
Yeah.
understand that. I do another podcast on the side, and we were filming some episodes last night, and it's funny because the two ladies were from California, my co-host that hosts it with me and our guest. And when it was all said and done, we were talking a little bit after, and all they could do was make fun of my Canadian accent, apparently, because just the way I was saying certain things, they were just sitting there and repeating it to me and laughing, and so all in
I did.
jest, of course.
You know how they always tease us about saying A?
Yep.
When I go down to Arizona, they're always teasing about A, and I didn't realize that I do it. And
Yeah,
I
I
was
don't
walking
either.
down the street one day doing my walk, and I passed these people, and I said, "Beautiful day, isn't it, eh?" And I
Yeah.
caught myself, and I thought, I didn't even know I do that.
I've done that many times where I've had people in the past tell me that from the States. And it's funny because one of the girls from last night, she was from Arizona, actually. She lives in Arizona and the other's California. But I get that all the time. I grew up as a bodybuilding fitness photographer back in the 90s. And I had some friends from New York and Detroit that we were shooting with. And every time we were talking, they said, "Yeah, we can tell you're from Canada by the way you talk because you always say A." And I don't, like you said, you don't realize it. And
No,
then you sit back and you listen to yourself sometimes, like, "Oh my God, I do say that a lot of times."
yeah,
Yeah, and the
I'm
way we say
trying
about
consciously to
and
not to
stuff like that.
about, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Out and about.
out and about, yeah.
We used to say oot and a boot. And I'm like, I don't say a
I
boot.
don't say that, no.
No,
But
we
that's
don't,
how
but
they
they
hear it, I guess.
they exaggerate it, I think.
Yeah,
So then you can tell, like it says even on your bio that you grew up with a bubbly personality. You can tell that that's the case. Now that's why everybody, of course, loved hanging out with you. So you're grade 5, so junior high through here, you're going things really well. Um, then you hit high school, and like you said, just getting into sports. And that were you like on teams or anything, or
to play the basketball and the volleyball and
Mhm.
baseball. Steve was into the football and the hockey,
Yeah,
and so I'd go out there and cheer him on
cool. Minor sports or more through school?
just through school. Well,
Through
he played
school.
it outside of school as well. I didn't,
Mhm.
just in school. And then I
Okay.
used to sing solos. I think it was Kiwanis. They'd had solos every year that you'd go and compete. So I did that, not in high school, but in grade school.
Okay.
And I used to like doing that.
That's very cool. So you go through high school, you graduate,
Right.
and what kind of a path did you go? Like I know you said your husband went into the military. Did he go right after school? Right after school was finished, or
Well, he started working before school was finished at the steel plant.
okay?
And one Christmas, he actually got gassed. He was in the gas ovens at the coke ovens and got gassed when he was coming off shift and was pretty sick. So the guy going on shift ended up in hospital. So he worked there for a while, and he joined the military so that he'd have a career.
Okay.
I worked in a store that did picture framing. I actually cut the frames and the glass and stretched needle points and did the matting. I made the picture frames.
Okay.
And I enjoyed doing that. And then I went back to school. Once we moved, I went back to school for administrative assistant. And when we got here in Petawawa, I started working at Atomic Energy then, doing that.
Which is now called CNL, of course.
Yes.
Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, or Laboratories, I guess.
Yes. So I started out as an admin assistant there and worked my way into project control coordinator, scheduling and resource loading all the engineering jobs across the site, which I love doing.
Yeah. And for people out there that are not from this area that don't know CNL or AECL, that used to be called Atomic Energy, it's one of the, I think, top 3, if I'm not mistaken, nuclear plants in the world, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did a lot of the nuclear isotopes for cancer.
Yeah.
Cancer treatments, and before they took the reactor offline, they had to make sure that there was a backup reactor that would take over doing that, because we were the only ones. We did 90% of the world's isotopes.
And I was always told, like, I have friends, because it's just about a half an hour from where we live here, because you're in the same town as me here, Pembroke, Ontario, and a lot of my friends who work there, basically when they got hired on, they were basically told that you basically got a job here for life as long as you're employed here, because even if for some reason they've got to close that plant down, it's still going to be open for 10, 20, 30 years, because with all the nuclear stuff in that area, they have to be able to clean it up properly and decommission it. And that's not something that just happens overnight or over a year or two. I mean, it's going to take years and years for them to be able to decommission a place like that. So even if you got hired now and then they close shop tomorrow, you'd still have a job for years, because it's a good, secure job to get if you can get it.
Yes, I loved it. And it was a pension, I was there right until after Steve passed away, and then I retired early.
Okay. So at that time, is that when you got on at CNL, is that when he went into the military, or?
Oh, no, it was after that. He got into the military about 3 weeks after we got married.
Okay.
He was gone for 3 months, boot camp. I thought my world fell apart because he was gone all of a sudden. So he did his 3 months on the East Coast, and then we went to North Bay. He had the on-the-job training there.
Okay.
And
Is this around the 80s, 90s?
In the 80s, yeah. In fact, 1980.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I got a job there working at, I took over managing a record store in the mall, and I also worked a second job at Mike's Milk, and he took a second job at Mike's Milk. So when I was working, he'd wash the floors and fill the freezers, and when he was working, I would do that for him, and just kept busy. We didn't have kids, so it just kept busy and started saving. But then he went from there, he went down to do his training, and I stayed behind in North Bay, and he'd come back and forth on weekends.
Okay.
And then he got posted to Winnipeg once he'd finished his training. So we went there for 4 years, and that's where our children were born.
Okay. And you have 2 children?
Yes. Tanya and
Ryan and Tanya. Yeah. Which one's older?
Tanya.
Tanya's older. Okay. So you had Tanya. And how old was she when Ryan was born?
2.
So there's only 2 years apart. So that's actually a good age.
Yeah.
My daughters are 6 years apart. So there's always that little friction between them, because at certain ages, the youngest one wants to be with her older sister and hang out with her and her friends. And she's like, I can't hang out with you. You're too young. But 2 years is not too bad.
No, 2 years was good.
Yeah.
And
Steve was one of the protective ones?
It went back and forth. I remember I was thinking about this the other day. She was riding her bike in our neighborhood, and Ryan was only 3. She was 5. And this boy was picking on Tanya, and Ryan got off his tricycle and ran across with his fists up. Don't hit my sister. So I said, don't fight. You're not allowed to fight. And then a few days later, I come home from work, and he was sitting on the grass, and some kid was hitting on his head. And he
Yeah.
wasn't doing a thing because he wasn't allowed to fight. So I said,
Oh,
you
jeez.
don't start a fight, but you stick up for yourself. So he got up
Exactly.
and took off after the kid. Kid ran home and he's banging on the door.
That's hilarious. And a lot of people don't know that you and I met through your daughter, Tanya, because Tanya's a good
That's
friend of
right.
mine. We've known each other for years. I've seen her pictures and that. So,
Yeah.
so they were born, you were living in Winnipeg at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So how long were you in Winnipeg?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. So it was a posting there, basically.
Yes. Yeah. And
Okay.
then we really only had the 2 postings, Winnipeg and then Petawawa. He
Okay.
was working on little jets in Winnipeg. And when we came to Petawawa, he switched over to helicopters.
Okay.
So he was attached to the army, but with the helicopters.
So he has family here, but your family, other than your parents that moved you here, the rest of your family is back home
That's right.
in the UK there.
That's right.
Okay. So do you get to go back every now and then and visit, or do you know
Well,
any
until
of them?
COVID, yeah, I still know them all, and they come and visit once in a while. It's not enough, you know. And
No,
once
true.
COVID hit, I didn't want to go over because the numbers were really high.
Mhm.
I'd like to go over in the next year or two.
Yep.
And we took my granddaughter, Alicia, Tanya's daughter, over when she was 8 months old. And then again, when she was a little bit older, I took her over. My cousin was getting married, so we went over
Okay.
there, and I took Steve with us. And he was sick at the time, so she was a wonderful help. Like,
Oh, good.
yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I can see that with her. So you're there for 4 years. You get posted to Petawawa.
Mhm.
Probably a bit of a culture shock because Sault Ste. Marie and then Winnipeg, kind of bigger cities and stuff like
Yes.
that. And then you moved to Petawawa. I know it was a culture shock for me when I moved here, being from Toronto area and Brampton, just outside of Toronto, big cities. And then you moved to Petawawa, and it's a small town.
Well, when we were in Winnipeg, he'd go away on the occasional course, which was a few weeks. When we got to Petawawa, it seemed like he was gone all the time, out in the field and going to alert for 6 weeks and going on 6-month tours.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time he was going out in the field, he said, I just need some money to take with me for beer. And I said, beer? I said, I thought when you go on the field, you're eating bugs and drinking stream water, not beer.
Yeah,
He was rough
exactly.
like I was expecting, but yeah, it was funny. It was a
Yeah,
culture shock for sure.
I know my sister-in-law, when she was married with her first husband, he used to get so mad at her because he was in the dragoons, which is the tanks and stuff like that. And they would go, like you said, on course. And she always, for some reason, I don't know if she did it on purpose or if it was just a coincidence, but every time he had to go for course, the night before he left and they had dinner, she always made sure they had like flax oil or flax seeds or whatever, flax, whatever in his meals. It could have been coincidence or maybe she did it on purpose. And he kept telling her, don't do that ever again because it's not like you have like bathrooms everywhere. And,
No.
so I think she started doing it on purpose.
Maybe she was doing that on purpose.
Exactly. Like, don't you ever do that again.
No.
So you're posted here for 4 years. Now, did you know anybody when you moved here? Because I know living here in a military town, sometimes postings, you know people from previous postings that maybe moved here ahead of time and things like that.
No,
So
absolutely nobody. No.
Okay. So did you live on base or did you?
Yes, we're in the PMQs. Yeah.
Okay.
And so you get to meet people fast because you're right close by and military community. So you meet everybody.
Definitely. So things are going well. Things are going good. But this time where you're posted for you, so you probably got what, late 80s, early 90s by this time?
We moved here in 85.
Okay.
Petawawa.
And he's in with the helicopters and that. When did some of the stuff started happening? Was it shortly after that or was it long after that?
No. We got married when we were 20.
Yeah.
He got diagnosed when he was 50.
Okay.
And looking back, I can see that there was problems a few years before we noticed, really.
Okay.
But at the time, you don't know because, I mean, I go downstairs and forget what I came for. It's a fine line between something's wrong with you or it's something normal, you know?
Exactly. So you thought just that he was just being forgetful, things like this, just like normal everyday people. I do that to myself. I'm 50. I'll be 51. And there's times where you walk in the kitchen, he's like, what did I walk in here for again? And you don't think anything of it, of course. And so when did you start thinking that, okay, there could be something more than just him being forgetful?
Well, looking back, one of the examples I've got is we were going through the Tim Hortons drive-through. Mm-hmm. And I was telling him what I wanted. He wanted me to go in and get the stuff. I said, no, just go through the drive. Well, then you order it. And looking back, he couldn't remember. So he didn't want to look silly. He knew something was wrong then, and I didn't. So I had to yell across him to place the order. But at the time, I didn't know that was the reason. The one thing that really stood out was I had asked him one Christmas to go outside and unplug the tree lights out of the extension cord and plug them directly into the house so we'd have an extra extension cord. And he just looked blank. And I said, "Did you hear what I said?" And he said, "No." So I repeated it, and he was still blank. I said, "Steve, you don't know what I'm saying, do you?" And he said, "No." So I don't know why, but I just said, I'm going to look this up on the internet. And I looked up a memory test.
Yeah.
And it came with a scoring sheet. And when I looked it over, I thought, he's not going to have a problem with this. It looks so easy.
Yeah.
And I gave him the test, and he was willing to take it. And he got really bad on it. 13 out of 30 or 13 out of 50. I can't remember what it was exactly. And we both knew something was wrong and burst into tears. And I had a doctor, but he didn't, because he just got out of the military, and he got out to go in the reserve so that we could have the farm.
Okay.
And then he got a job at Atomic Energy after that. And I had a doctor, he didn't, because he just got out of the military. So I called my doctor to see if he would take Steve on, and he said no, he was full. So I said, well, I need an appointment for me then. So I took Steve with me. And when we got there, I said, this isn't for me, it's for him. And you either need to take him on or find me somebody. And I showed him the test. And he took him on immediately and got all the different doctors that we needed to see lined up for us.
Okay. And was it more that when you would say something to him, he automatically would just forget what you said? Or was it more he didn't know what you were saying or didn't understand because he forgot? Like when you say, take the extension cord, unplug the lights, and plug it right into the house, he didn't know what you were talking about because he didn't remember what an extension cord was or something? Or is it just that you said it and then within the split second, he forgot what you said?
I think it's a mixture. One of them, he started losing what the word was.
Okay.
And if you give him multiple thoughts in one sentence, like we speak naturally in compound sentences, and somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's can't understand that. You have to give short sentences that's a one thought at a time. Otherwise, they just lose it. If I said, here, could you put the ketchup in the fridge and then go get the roast out of the freezer? He would have been lost. He wouldn't know where to start. If I'd said, could you put this in the fridge? He would be able to do that. Okay. And then give him another task. So I think it was a mixture at that time. I had given him a multiple thing to do.
So if you would have said, just unplug the lights from the extension cord, he would have been able to
might have done that. Yeah.
And then say, okay, now take that and plug it in. So you had to do it each one separately.
Yeah, right.
So of course that's got to get frustrating for you. Plus, how old were your children roughly around this time?
Well, that was 2017. So well, they were young adults.
Yeah, that would have been like 7 years ago, roughly.
Well, he passed away 6 years ago, so 12 years ago. So yeah, they were in.
So they
their
would have been in their like
late
20s, 30s, things like that. Yeah. So that's got to be rough on them too.
Yeah, it was. Both of them. It was terrible. It's like being hit in the head with a bat. You're looking at this man and he looks like there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And one day you're talking to him and everything's fine. And the next day you've got a diagnosis that is a life sentence, you know?
So it's almost like an adult trapped in like a little child's body.
Right.
Or sorry, an adult's body trapped in a child's brain, kind of, because he's relearning things almost from the start again.
Right. I paid for a full day of neuropsych testing because we needed to know what it was. And it's awful to say, but we were kind of hoping that there was some tumor there that they could take out and he'd be fine. This was the worst case scenario. And the neuropsych testing, I got the results back and I didn't understand them. So the geriatric specialist that we were seeing, she said, did you get this explained to you? And I said, no. And they test you based on your age, your education level. So a normal person, I would think, would be in the 80 percentile if everything's good. And every area of his brain was already affected, and he was less than 2 percentile. Okay. I don't know how he functioned. but he did,
Yeah.
and so it gave us a basis of where we got to start and what are we going to do. And nobody, that's really why I wrote the book. Nobody told me what I had coming, how to
Yeah.
deal with different things that came up. And it was like a roller coaster. Today is fine and I'm used to it. Tomorrow is something different. And I've got to get used to that new normal.
Mhm.
And it was really frustrating and scary.
Oh, for sure. Now, was this once you started realizing what was going on, was it a fast progression or did it just go slowly over time or?
Well, when you get early onset Alzheimer's, it doesn't mean that it's early stages. It means that you got it at an early age.
Mhm.
And when you get it at an early age, it's very aggressive. Somebody that gets it later on in life can live for years with it.
Yeah.
But when we went to the geriatric specialist, my question to her was, how do I know when he can't be alone?
Mhm.
And she didn't answer the question. She just said, he'll have a maximum of 6 years to live.
Okay.
I burst into tears
Yep.
and he didn't say a word. And I couldn't understand why he wasn't reacting. But
Yeah.
Steve was very easygoing, and why worry about something you can't change? That
Yeah.
was his philosophy in life. And I said, yeah, but this is your life,
Yeah.
our life,
Mhm.
and it's changed drastically. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
I've still got to work because we had bills. Like, how are we
Yeah.
going to do this? Atomic
And was there
energy.
any, sorry?
Atomic energy was wonderful because I went back and I said, we have to tell your boss.
Yeah.
And he said, I noticed that something was wrong. And I thought Steve didn't like his job anymore.
Mm.
But now that we know that, and I begged them to keep him on
Yeah.
because we needed to get our finances straightened out to see how I was going to manage.
Yeah.
And they did keep him for a year. They adjusted his job. I mean, he would take the garbage out, he would photocopy, he would do any little task that he was capable of because they had to be careful for safety reasons on a nuclear
True.
site. He couldn't
Yeah.
be, and
True.
I was in the Deep River office, so that was off site.
Yeah.
So they allowed him to come up there, and he lasted a year, and then they called me into the conference room, and I knew.
Yeah.
Because he was getting, I had noticed at home, he couldn't hang a coat on a coat hanger.
Okay.
And so I knew that that's what was coming. And I said, please don't tell him, let me tell him.
Mhm.
And they did. They were very, very good.
So for that year, they moved him over to where you were because I guess he'd have to go into work with you every day because it's not like he
Yes.
can drive himself there.
Oh, they took his license right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So,
definitely. So, and I don't think people realize when it comes to Alzheimer's, everybody just naturally relegates Alzheimer's with, oh, well, it just lost a memory and you just can't remember things. They don't realize how serious it is and that it can cause death from just
oh,
Alzheimer's
yes.
itself, and because it's
Yes.
doing something to the brain. So
Yeah, your
for people
brain
that's
is
not familiar with
deteriorating.
Alzheimer's, yeah, maybe give them a little background on Alzheimer's, a
Yeah.
little not a background, but you know what I mean. Just
Yeah, it gets like plaque and tangles in the brain, which causes it to misfire. That's the memory and knowing how to do things. But it also, your brain works your whole body.
Mhm.
Your body starts shutting down, doesn't know how to breathe and doesn't know how to do things. And that's why. And I guess that's a good lead into this fall when I go down to Arizona. I was introduced to a dementia task force down there.
yes,
And they're going to allow me to have the Alzheimer's experience where
okay,
they fit you up with headphones
yeah,
so you got background, they tape your fingers, they make it so and put the glasses on so that you don't see properly like they don't. And I'm looking forward to that. I've put a video on my website,
hmm
and it's a newscaster that it accompanies a man whose mother has Alzheimer's, and they let them both go through the experience. And they're only doing it for like 8 minutes. And they're in tears at the end of it, doing normal tasks, and they can't understand and they can't do it. And I'm looking forward to doing the experience myself.
definitely. And there's the video for people that do want to go to it. It's on YouTube. It's called Experience 12 Minutes in Alzheimer's Dementia. And it's basically like you're saying, they basically situate you up to basically kind of get the idea of what it would be like to have Alzheimer's, even though you're not technically going to be able to get the full experience of being having Alzheimer's dementia, but at least it gives you that kind of you can think that if it makes you feel the way it does with what they're doing, you can imagine what somebody really going through it is going
I
through,
know
because it's
they're
probably
going
100
through
times
this
worse.
all day long, every day. We're experiencing it for that short period of time. And it's a matter of whether you can hear them properly, understand them properly, or what they want you to do, and knowing how to do it. If you look at it, you'll understand. It give you a better understanding and compassion for the people that are doing this.
No, definitely.
And
And I'm not going to play it here because it is about 8 minutes long. So
right,
people can go and check it out. I'm going to show your website here too, because people, if they want to see that video, they can go to your website and they can get to the link. It's right on the main page there, your welcoming screen. You just scroll down under right where there's a big tree on your website there. Picture of a big tree, which is like the cover of your book, of course. And it says, thank you for visiting. If they scroll down, they'll see the YouTube link right there. If you click on that,
right.
it'll take you to it. So it's just soniadischer.com, and you can check it out. And well, no, definitely. And I think it's going to be something different for you to experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can get somebody to videotape me going through it, and then I'll post it. But yeah, it's really, and I noticed a difference in Steve's sight too. It was like he had glasses like this, because if you approached him straight on, he could see you, but if you came in from the sides, he couldn't. So it started deteriorating fast. At the beginning, he would feel the chair before he sat down.
Okay.
And if he didn't feel it, he'd miss it. So his
Okay.
depth perception was going already.
Yes.
You know.
And then, so this basically, he was diagnosed around 50.
Yes.
And when he passed away, he was what, 51, 52?
56.
Oh, 56. So it lasted for about 6 years. So just getting periodically just worse and worse, to the point where, was he getting to the point where he wasn't remembering you or your kids, or?
No, I was actually blessed with that. I tried everything under the sun to get him better. And one of the things I tried was stem cell treatments in the States.
Okay.
The first one we had to go to Mexico, and then the next 4, I took him to the States, the same company, but and the first one was like a miracle, because he was following me around and didn't talk to our friends, didn't want to do anything. And after that, like within 3 days, he was talking to everybody at the campsite. Okay. And had all kinds of energy. And I really think that kept him remembering me. Plus, I mean, he saw me every single day. Sure. And he knew our kids and everything. And even at the end, when I put him in a nursing home for the last 2 years, it wasn't because he was aggressive or anything. It was because he was running. And I think he was thinking he was going on a military run. That was ingrained in him. Yeah. And it was getting a safety issue. You know, sure. He couldn't dress himself. So if he had done that in the wintertime and got out, he would have froze. Mm-hmm. And he was going to the Highway 41 all the time. So, you know, could have got hit by a car. Yeah. That's one of the things that used to aggravate me. The first thing people think of is, be careful, because he's going to get aggressive. Mm-hmm. And there are so many different people that have the dementia and the Alzheimer's, and they don't get aggressive. That is not the norm. And that used to upset me. And I think if you can put this in your mind, that if you have a friend that has a loved one that's been diagnosed, please don't say, watch out, they're going to get aggressive. You love that person. You don't want to hear that they're going to get aggressive. And you're not stupid. If they start getting aggressive, you'll do something about it. Sure. But don't label them right away. No. You know, and I
think we've all been through that kind of an experience. Like I know with my my dad, with his mom, my grandmother, we used to go to her house all the time and visit with my dad, my mom, and my brothers, and we'd be playing cards and all that stuff. And while the adults were doing their thing and that, she was a very caring lady. We were always, we knew her very well. And then as she got older in years and into her 80s, I think, I don't know if she made it in her 90s. I think she was in her 80s. And again, we had to put her into, well, we didn't, my dad and his brother, my uncle there, they had to put her into a senior's home because they couldn't nobody could take care of her anymore. She had her own house in Lindsay. They had to sell the house, put her in one close to my uncle so that he was close by. And it used to upset my dad because my uncle, of course, got to see her more often because she was close by to him. But whenever my dad would go to visit, she didn't know who he was. And of course, at the time, he didn't say anything. But then when he leaves the senior's home, of course, it did bother him. And there was
Yeah,
times where he was just very upset because he's like, my own mom doesn't even recognize who I am.
I know. There was a nurse at the nursing home her mother was there
Mhm.
with dementia or Alzheimer's, and she didn't know her.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm living with the thought that she doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know I'm her daughter, but she likes me. She likes me as a person. And her eyes would light up because it was a familiar person coming to visit.
Mm-hmm.
She just didn't relate that it was her daughter. And I think you just have to get in another mindset that
Yeah.
they're not doing it because they don't like you. They don't
And they're
have
not
a
trying to hurt
choice.
you. Yeah.
No, they're not trying to hurt you. And they might say things that are hurtful and they don't mean them. You
No.
know, and it's hard to get over that, but you just have to remember that they're still in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Because
every once
my
in a
wife's
while, you'll get a spark.
my wife's grandfather, same way. He was in one of the senior homes here, and we would go visit him, and he would look at her and I and my one daughter, and he's like, "And you are?" And she's like, "I'm your granddaughter, Grandpa." And oh yeah, and this is, and oh, it's my husband, John. And then he would go on about how, oh yeah, he goes, and she goes, my dad is your son Raymond. Oh yeah, how's Raymond doing? Haven't seen him. I haven't been to Eganville in a while. I gotta go back to Eganville because I gotta get my bike. We gotta get my bike. They won't let me have my bike, so I can go back home to Eganville. He hadn't lived in Eganville in probably like 20 years.
Yeah, I
He was
know.
living here, but he still had him in his brain that he lived in Eganville, and the people here were being mean because they wouldn't give him his bike so he can drive back home, go
Right.
get home in Eganville, and then about couple minutes into the conversation, he would turn around again and say, "And you are again?" And she goes, "I'm your granddaughter." And this gentleman, that's my husband, John. And he would
Yeah.
do this. We'd be there for maybe half an hour, and he would then did about 5 times trying to
Yeah.
ask who we were and that. And then at one time, he would call her by her mom's name,
Yes.
my
And
wife's mom's.
I think they see the resemblance and they're thinking way back. So if you look like your mom,
Mhm.
they're seeing your mom at a younger age when they're looking at
Yes.
you now, right? And that's way back. One person explained to me because I said, like, how can he not remember what we did today? But he
Yeah.
knows what happened in the military years ago.
Yep.
And they said your brain's like an onion. If you think of it like an onion, when you're peeling the outer layers, they come off
Mhm.
very easily. There are recent memories. As
Yeah.
you get closer to the middle, it's nice and tightly fitted in there, and they're harder to peel open. And those are
Mhm.
your long ago memories, so they don't leave you quite as quick. And it made a lot of sense to me.
It does. And I always say that that's a wife syndrome because my wife, I can ask her something and she'll ask me something about that. And I'll say, I already told you about that. But if it's something I did wrong, she'll remember that for 10, 15 years and she'll bring it back up again 10 years later. I call it wife syndrome, not
It's a wife
Alzheimer's.
syndrome. Like men have selective hearing.
Exactly. She won't remember what I told her yesterday, but she'll remember that thing I did wrong about 10 years ago and what time
Right.
it was and what day it was. So,
Oh gosh.
right.
One thing I'd like to tell you is because we keep going back and forth, dementia and
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. Dementia is the umbrella,
Okay.
and it's got all different diseases under it that can get dementia.
Okay.
Alzheimer's is one of them. Parkinson's is one of them. Lewy body is one of them.
Okay.
And 7 years ago, there were 70 diseases under that dementia umbrella. Now there's over 100. So it's getting worse. We need
Yes.
to educate ourselves. And
I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't even realize that dementia and all the umbrella because I didn't put two. I just thought Alzheimer's, dementia are basically the same thing. So I'm glad you
no, yeah.
know. So going on to your book, then
Mm-hmm.
let us know, like, why did you write the book? What was your goal for it? Because I know people nowadays they're like, unless you're a top 100 book in the New York Stock Exchange or something like that,
Yeah,
it's not like people are making lots of money off of books.
No.
What was the reason behind writing the book? And tell us a little bit more about the book itself.
Well, like I said, there was no help when we first got the diagnosis. Like, what do I do from here? Who do I go and see? Who's going to tell me what to expect and when to expect it? And what do I do about it? There was no trials that he could get on. Any trial started at 55 and older. He was too young, so they wouldn't let him on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt alone. There was support groups, but I mean, I was youngest one there. Most people had it in their later years. They were a help to me because I could vent. and I could cry, and they did have some answers for me of what they'd experienced, and I could give them what I was going through and how I was dealing with it. So I wanted to give back. I wanted to put down in a book what we went through, how we dealt with it, to relieve some of the frustration, not only for myself, but for Steve as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we beat ourselves up. I wasn't a saint. I made mistakes, but you learn from the mistakes and you don't do it again. You know, so we just got to tell ourselves we're human. And if I did it wrong last time, I can't do it that way because it didn't work for him. I've got to do it a different way. One of the things that I remember was I was walking down the hallway. He was in the bathroom and he had the deodorant and he was rubbing it up and down his chest. And my reaction, this was early on in it, was, "What are you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I knew I shouldn't have done that because his face was embarrassment, scared. And I stopped right away and said, "You have to put it under your arm, Steve." And then he was okay. But they have such a deep reaction because they don't even know they're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they see that you're upset or you're confused about what they're doing, it just makes them more confused and more agitated, and it just keeps going worse. It doesn't get better. Like putting his shoes on. If he was having a hard time, I would stop and stand up and I'd put my hand on his cheek so I could get him to look in my eyes and say, "Okay, we're going to try that again. And it's going to go okay this time. So don't worry." And then I would start again and it would go fabulous the second time around. But the first time he could see he was doing it wrong and he'd keep trying to put his foot in a different area because he couldn't see where the shoe was, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So just taking your time, stop and pause. So I thought, I got to put this down on paper. And if I don't publish it, well, then it was therapy for me putting it down.
Yep.
And I had a couple of really good friends read it through in my drafts, and they said, "You have to put this out there," because they could relate to it. And one of my friends, her husband had cancer and it had gone to his brain, and she saw a lot of similarities of things that I was experiencing. And she was in tears. And so I'm really glad I did put it out.
Good.
I've got great comments back. And when I fly to Arizona now, I donate a book on every flight.
Okay.
I asked the head steward to pick a random seat and give it to somebody.
Yes.
And 90% of the time, that person has just had somebody diagnosed. Like I can't get over that.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've done the right thing. I held back on a lot of things that I didn't put in the book because I thought I don't want it too long and people be bored. They wouldn't want to read it. But now I'm wishing that I had put it out there. You know,
well, I'm glad that you did put this out there because I'm sure everybody has had at least somebody in their life that's gone through this. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't like saying that because that means that this is happening a lot because you don't want to see anybody get sick. But it's unfortunate. It is happening at every household, I'm sure. And
well, when you think back, 7 years ago, there's over 100 now. So it's out there.
And when you were writing the book, was the whole time you were writing it, were you expecting, like, I know you said your friends said, "Oh, you got to get it out there." Was when you first started putting it to paper, was it with the intention of, "I'm going to put this into a book," or was this more just a diary for yourself? And then with your friends convincing you, that's where it became a book?
I wrote it like a book,
Okay.
thinking I would like to put it out there, but I really wasn't sure. I just thought I'm just going to keep filling it in because when I made a list of the different subjects that I wanted to cover that were in my mind. But when every time I sat down, it just flowed. Yeah. And I could sit there for a couple of hours and it just kept coming out. My memories were so fresh. And I thought, I'm doing this for me and I'm doing it for Steve and anybody else that is experiencing it. All I want them to do is tell me that they got something out of the book and it was the right thing to do.
No, definitely. And I'm looking at your website now. There's room that people can even put like reviews and testimonials. Like I'm looking at it right now, and you've got all the way from the States and everywhere, people just commenting about your book, all 5-star ratings. So obviously it's helped a lot of people. And I'm not just talking about, you've got a couple on there. You've got like,
there's lots.
I'm looking at, there's lots on there. And that's probably just some of what you probably get in. So I think people would be able to take advantage of what's in this book, I think you should go get it. If you go to her website, soniadischer.com, you can see there where a little bit more about the book, and also it shows you have it on Amazon, both Canadian and the American Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Indigo. They can get Kindle versions if they don't want to
Yes.
buy an actual purchase of a book
Right.
like this. They can actually
And-
read it online.
Yeah, Kindle and Kobo online.
Yeah.
And
I saw it's hardcover and softcover too, either one.
Yep.
I've got the
Yes.
softcover here.
Yeah. And I'm working towards getting an audiobook out as well. Somebody's going to do the audiobook for me. I would like to say, though, Amazon.ca allows third-person people to buy things and resell it at inflated prices. And that's what's happening right now on .ca. So if you're going to buy in Canada, go to Barnes and Noble or Indigo, Indigo chapters, and they've got the right price. The States.com, Amazon.com, they've got it right, but so I've got them working on that to fix it.
Okay.
So that
No, that's good to know, because yeah, I'm looking at that now. You go to Indigo, and I think it was just on. Yeah, it says here $7. So it's not an expensive book.
Look at the soft cover though.
Yeah, this just says that's paperback $24.99.
Right, but if you look on Amazon.ca, it's over $30
to $45. Yeah, I saw that.
And they even had one on there last week. I keep checking it every couple of days. They had a used version for $55, and then a collector's version for $85. Like, who's going to pay that?
Exactly.
I even sent them a message and said, like, this is my book.
Yeah, and there is no collector's edition.
There's no collector's.
They're all collectors. They're all the same book.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, shop around out there and get it.
Yeah, if you go to Barnes and Noble, now is Barnes and Noble, is that Canadian or is that
Canadian
American?
and the U.S. Yeah.
Okay, because it says here hardcover 22, paperback $16.99. I think that's American prices.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it's well worth the price.
Yeah, they have it in Cole's bookstore here in Pembroke.
Cool. Okay.
And Hamilton's Gas Bar has it, and so does April's Attic have it, and so does Fresco's, the restaurant. They have.
Okay. Yes.
I've signed some and left them there.
And I'm looking at it's a good book. It looks really, really thick, which it is. It's a lot of information there, but it's only 130 pages or whatever. And there's some beautiful pictures of you and your family with your husband and your son and your daughter in there. And it's a great book where it basically takes you through the whole journey, I guess, from the start and through the whole. It gives a little background about you guys, and then it gets into the start of when it started happening, and through that whole 6 years. He even talks a little bit about when his unfortunate passing happened. And I think there's a lot here that can help a lot of people out there. I like too how in the back you've also got helpful resources for people. You got the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario, of America. There's a SW Dessert Chapter office in Central Arizona region. So you got lots of different areas that people can turn to if they need it. Do you have any? We're coming near the end of it here, and before we do, I always ask my guests if they have any advice now. But before we get to that, what are some advice, not final words, but some advice that you would give people that if they think that somebody that they're close to is going through this, or because a lot of them probably think that, I don't want to say anything, they're going to be mad at me because they just forgot about that or this, or they're too embarrassed to go to the doctor and say, I think my husband or my wife or my daughter or whatever is going through this. What kind of advice would you give them to what to look for?
Well, the earliest that you can get it diagnosed and get them on the main medication for it, it slows it down. But if you wait too long, it doesn't. So the earlier you can get diagnosed, the better. Maybe it isn't this, but it's better to know than not know.
Yeah.
And everybody kept saying to me that I should put him in a home. You'll know when you're ready. Don't let somebody tell you that you've got to do it. I did take their advice and put him into respite once every 2 weeks for a weekend. I still went down there every day with him, but I got a good sleep at night. And you really have to look after yourself so that you can look after them. Just because they went downstairs and forgot something doesn't mean they've got Alzheimer's.
Exactly.
But he was having problems with his fine motor skills. If you asked him to go and get a screw, he brought something back that was not a screw.
Yeah.
So if they're doing things that are really out of the ordinary, then I would say get him checked. I had a phone call the other day, actually an email from somebody that attended my talk down in Arizona.
Yeah.
And she had said that she got a lot out of the talk, she got a lot out of my book, but could I call her?
Okay.
So I did. And her mother has dementia. And she wanted some advice. And I said, I'm not a doctor, but I can give you advice on what we experienced and how we dealt with it. And I suggested that, because she was having some issues, and I suggested that her father take her mother for a checkup, but say that they were both going to get a checkup because of getting health insurance going to the States, so that she wasn't being picked on. Because I found that with Steve, if I put it on me, he was okay, do anything for me.
Yeah.
If I said, you have to do this, then that was not the way to approach it. So I told her to get the father to say, we're going to both do this. And I said, he can make a fake appointment for himself if he wants to, but at least it'll get her in and checked. So, if you have to do that, put it on you instead of them.
Exactly. And before we go, do you have anything you'd like to, other than the book, of course, go buy the book. I'm telling you that now. But anything else that you got coming up? Do you have any speaking engagements? Do you do speaking engagements? Do you have any workshop? Anything that's coming up that you'd like to advertise out for everybody?
I do speaking engagements. I did one at a memory clinic in the States, the Summit, and that went really well. Banner Hospital down in the States is really big, and they have an Alzheimer's Institute as well. They actually put an article in their Beacon newsletter under their caregiver corner, and they wrote up on me, which was great. When I go back, I'm going to be doing another talk down there, and I'm going to go to the dementia task force and get that experience of what it's like. And I want to get in touch with the local politicians here. I have written to a couple of them and I've had no response, but there's some things we need to bring back to Canada. They are so much more advanced in the States than we are. One great thing is their airports have a lanyard. If you've got somebody with dementia, you can go there. They give you a lanyard that's a special color, and everybody that works there knows that this person has dementia. And they've been trained to how to approach them, not to center them out if they're saying something weird, or if they look lost, you know why. And they get them dementia accredited. There's all kinds of businesses that they do that for. Both the Phoenix and the Mesa airport have done that. They've got a moving company down there that has been accredited. They'll go in and take a picture of every room and cupboard in your house and set your new place up to look just like it, so that it's not such a drastic change for that person. I think it's wonderful. So I'd like to try and get some things implemented here.
Very cool. And anybody that's interested in anything that Sonia is doing, or you want to see that video, that 8-minute video that she has on her website, just go to her website. I'll put it up on the screen there for you, soniadischer.com, SONIADISCHER. So soniadischer.com. You can find that video on there. Experience 12 minutes in Alzheimer's dementia. You're going to see basically a little bit of what she's going to go through when she goes down to Arizona. And it's probably puts it in perspective for a lot of people. If you want to purchase the book, she's got it linked on there where you can purchase it. The Barnes & Noble and Indigo and the Kindle versions, Amazon USA, and hold off on Amazon Canada for now until she gets that fixed up. But go purchase the book, or if you're here local in the Pembroke, Ontario, Canada region, she named off a bunch of different places you can get it at Fresco's and Cole's Bookstore and a bunch of other places. The book is called Dealing with Early Onset Alzheimer's, Love, Laughter, and Tears. I want to thank you, Sonia, for coming on here and sharing your story. I know it's still pretty fresh. It's only been about 5-6 years, but I think you're helping a lot of people by coming out and talking about your story. And I'm honored that you came on here and talked to our viewers.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
No, thank you. And until next time, I hope everybody has an amazing day. And remember, if anybody asks, say the Butler did it.